Hey everyone, welcome to Happy. This is going to be a review of 3 different types of gas-powered equipment we use continuously. Check the chapter description below for the 3 devices we're covering, and I also add 3 tips on how we use the gas-powered equipment, how we use it heavily, but have them starting on the first pull over the last 10 years. Welcome to Happy. We're going to take it up a notch. Be a slightly different ball. To know if I'm gonna get right down here. You can see that ladybug larvae. Bam! Pull the thing down like a monkey. I never used a chainsaw growing up, but managing about 3 acres out here in rural Maryland taught me a lot about chainsaws. I've clocked now about 10 years of heavy chainsaw use. In this review, I'm really going to talk about the difference between a 16-incher and a 24-incher. What sort of value do you get out of those two? This Husqvarna clocks in at about $500, 24-inch bar, 13 pounds and 60 cc's of power. She is a monster. This bad boy's been in the garage for a couple years because it stopped working. I changed the carburetor, it still didn't work, and I even took it to a small engine shop, and that's the tag to it, and they concluded that it's probably in the piston. So I went to this little 16-inch Echo that I had. To my amazement, everything I could do with this 24-incher, I could do with this 16-incher. This girl is a workhorse. It's $300 cheaper. It starts no problem. The key is to make sure that your chain is always sharp and use ethanol-free gas. That's another key thing, ethanol-free gas, whatever you do. Because this girl is so much lighter and has ample power, I can cut down really big trees. I just learned to manipulate the tree and use cuts properly in order to have this 16-inch bar do the same thing for us here in rural Maryland, doing the same thing that this 24-incher does. But with this girl, I can get up on a ladder and prune limbs up on a tree without killing myself. This guy's 13 frickin' pounds and it's heavy as hell, and this 24-inch bar is really long. You got to look out for that. Ever since the Husqvarna has been in the garage, I've used this Echo 16-inch Echo chainsaw exclusively. Whether it's been climbing up a ladder to do trimming up on a tree, maybe 8-10 foot off the ground, cutting through large, gigantic oak trees that have fallen to the ground and a gigantic cherry tree that fell over, or cutting firewood. This 16-inch chainsaw has done a fantastic job. Although the 16 is small and inexpensive, it is super efficient, super easy to use, very reliable, and it cuts giant trees if that's what you need to do. Now, you do need to have some skill in using a chainsaw. I never used a chainsaw. I developed that skill, and if I can develop that skill, you can too. Don't be intimidated by the $200, $220 price tag. This is a very useful tool around the farm, and it's really all I'll ever need going forward. This is a Stihl weed eater, a FS 100RX. I'm not too sure what all of that means. I bought this used from a neighbor for a low price, and let me tell you, that was 10 years ago. I have used this hard for 10 years. I really don't know what varieties of weed eaters you can buy, and I sort of don't care. This girl is a stud. It is a monster weed eater. As small and light as she is, she starts 100% of the time. Just turn on the choke, give that little bubble a little squeeze. Always use ethanol-free gas, always. We've done nothing to her except I did have to replace the carburetor. I replaced the head. That's after I purchased it used and used it heavily for 10 years. That's all that's been replaced. We do use ethanol-free gas. She does take a mix, but start with ethanol-free gas, and the air filter is cleaned at least twice a year. This is a stud weed eater. Here at Happy, we're frugal, and so when I was selecting a gas-powered blower, I was looking at the handheld Stihl, and I looked at this backpack type here. I cannot tell you how happy I am to get the backpack version. I cannot believe I thought of getting one of those handheld, even though it'd be a Stihl, gas-powered, plenty of oomph, CFMs or whatever the heck these things are measured by. Because this is a backpack, I will actually get up on the house. That's particularly important in spring when the maple is dropping tons and tons of seeds and they bed into that grid that we have over the gutters. This girl's been used heavily for at least 6-7 years. I've never changed the spark plug. I regularly clean out the air filter using pressured air. I don't think I've ever changed the air filter. Keeping things manicured is a lot easier with this sucker. 3 lessons I learned using small motors over the last 10 years. Use the right gas. Don't store gas in the device if you're not going to use the device for a number of months, and keep the air filter clean. Starting with the most important thing, use ethanol-free gas. You can get ethanol-free gas at an airport if you're lucky, at a gas station if you can find it, ain't a whole bunch of them, or at a big box store like this can here. I was kind of pinched for time. The local airport actually closed that I used to go to, and going to a gas station is actually going to be a pretty good haul for me. I bought this can from a small motor shop about 100 years ago because I wanted a 1-gallon container that is appropriately marked as a mix, 50-to-1. So I couldn't screw this up. Get yourself a little 10-cent funnel, bam, pour in your gas, whether it's from a big box store, which I hope you don't do. I hope you find a gas station near you, or you're lucky enough to be able to go to an airport. Got our little funnel, bam, 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 and use some mixed fuel. This here is Stihl. Echo, I'm sure, makes an excellent brand of fuel mix. And there's also the gray container that is supposedly smokeless. I'm still cycling through this stuff here. I will migrate to the smokeless version. In my early days, I took 1 or 2 devices to the local repair shop, and I noticed that they were just replacing the carburetor. Got to chatting with the person, and they made very clear that ethanol-based, if your gas has ethanol in it, and your device is a 1 piston, which is all that equipment you just saw, just 1 piston, that ethanol gas really gunks up the carburetor, and probably not too good with the piston. I don't want to get into a motor shop issue. Ethanol-free is the key. Well, at $250, I might as well just buy a new device and, I don't know, keep throwing away equipment that just needs a new carburetor, or use ethanol-free gas. I think I made that clear. So I'm always using equipment except for maybe the coldest months, late December, January, February. We're in the northern hemisphere. This equipment will sit for a while. A blower may sit into February, March, maybe even April. So maybe 4 months on that. Weed eater gets quiet, equipment gets quiet. When you don't need it for a while, just run the gas through the motor. In other words, let that motor go until it dies on its own by running out of gas. Once or twice, I've actually just run the equipment and left it out in the driveway and just run it until it turns off on its own. The third tip, which is a sort of a no-brainer, is clean out that air filter maybe twice a year. We have a really cool high-pressure device at home, so getting the air filter out of the devices and blowing it off is like all about 10 minutes. Let that motor breathe, keep gunk from getting into the carburetor, and be mindful when you're using it not to drop your equipment into weird stuff, but sometimes you may be in very dusty conditions and things of that nature. Stuff happens, and also over time these air filters will get a little funky. I think I've replaced one air filter one time. Otherwise, I just keep those air filters clean with pressured air. Spark plugs, another thing that you could replace, but because we're using ethanol-free gas, I really don't find any gunk on my spark plugs. They're actually really clean. They're darkened, but they're not gunked. So I've replaced a spark plug, I think, one time, so I'm not even listing the spark plug as one of my 3 tips. Please subscribe to this channel. We're all about financial health, physical health, mental health, nutritional health, as we stand up this 2-acre food forest and also turn this residential home into a home that's as off-grid as possible. Love you.